Hey everyone, so today on this Nostalgia Watch, I am going to be going through seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Boy Meets World. Boy Meets World is probably the show I remember the best from the whole TGI Fridays lineup. That and Sister Sister and Two of a Kind, actually, the two twin shows, were the shows I remembered best. But this one, I think, has left the most lasting impression of those three shows. And it was the story of Cory, Sean, Eric, and Topanga, and their friendship and their relationships through childhood into adulthood. And so going through these seasons has been me rewatching the show and seeing how everything kind of comes together. So to go into each season overall to kind of talk about it, we're going to start off, of course, with season 1. And season 1 of Boy Meets World is kind of odd. It does set up all the characters and all the relationships and the type of humor that kind of happens throughout the entire series, but at the same time, it also does not completely fit in with future canon. For example, we are often told from like season 2 up that Cory and Topanga have been best friends and been in love with each other since they were like little kids, like basically in diapers. They've been in love with each other for that long. But in this season, even though we are introduced to Topanga and Cory, and they do become friends, they seem to have no prior knowledge of each other, and they certainly don't have a friendship. I mean, Cory kind of sees Topanga as the weird chick because she has a very hippie personality, and while a relationship between them does eventually form, that whole crush, been together since they were like diaper thing, is not established in this season. And speaking of, Topanga's personality and stuff, there are shifts in personalities of the characters as well. The personality of Topanga that we see in season 1 does not transfer over. Instead, she becomes more of a perfectionist and socially acceptable in like how she dresses and how she acts. When in the first season, she was kind of like the spirit, earth, mother, child kind of character, and that was completely thrown away. Eric Matthews, he's another one who starts off as kind of being, cooler, older brother character, but then he just becomes stupider and stupider to the point where you feel like someone should be concerned about him because he makes some mistakes that you really shouldn't be making at that age. And so that comes into play a lot. They changed that. Characters like Sean has a sister in season 1 that is never brought up again. He also has a brother in season 3 that never gets brought up again because I think that was a mistake. But it's like little things, and the character of Minkus, who he's in the title, he's in the opening credits in this season, and after that he's completely gone. I heard he comes back for like a graduation scene later on, but I'm not up to that part of the season yet, so I don't really remember. But anyway, those are just little things though. But other than that, this season is very charming because Cory works well as a main protagonist. Because he is very much in the middle. He's not too much of either extreme. He's the person that I think as the audience we can most relate to. And he basically is an anchor for the entire show because, Sean represents one spectrum of it, Eric is another spectrum, Topanga is another one. So him and seeing him learn and grow as a person is good because he's built as a character who is able to learn from his mistakes and grow as a person, but he's also an underachiever of some sort, so he will never completely be perfect, but he also has the potential to be a better person, which is why we can both like him and not be overly annoyed by the fact that he doesn't completely grow up, because he does, but because of the formulaic nature of the show, if he were to suddenly just become, perfect, it would kind of lose its touch. Mr. Feeney is probably one of the best educators in television. I always feel like whenever I see him, I was like, Mr. Feeney. I remember he played John Adams, and I'm just like, that's not John Adams, that's Mr. Feeney. He's teaching me history, even though he's not teaching me history. His role in the show as the mentor, teacher character works so well because he really does care about his students, and you feel that when he talks to them. And when the episode in this season comes where he has this whole geography competition, and it's like his legacy because he's hosted the champion every time, and he gives Cory a chance to participate because Cory can win something that he really wants. And even though Cory doesn't win the competition because he kind of chokes, he does do better in his geography. He gets a great grade on his test. And he puts that on the wall next to all the other certificates. So it's little things like that are so touching because you really feel the relationships between these characters are real. Like, you feel like they care about each other because of how long they've been together. And you feel like they know each other. I think that's what makes the show works best. But for all intents and purposes, season 1 is pretty much like a very long pilot season. But it tells you how it's going to be. Everything kind of gets resolved in one episode or so. But how the characters interact is what makes it touching and fun to watch. In season 2, they enter high school, which kind of seems like a really big jump because they look so young in this season, also they're in high school. But apparently in this world, high school is 7th grade too, so that kind of makes it work, I guess. I don't know. It was very weird to see that jump, that all of a sudden they're in high school from middle school. But Mr. Feeney is their principal, much to Cory and Sean's displeasure. And we also get a new teacher, Mr. Turner, who, yeah, he was fine. He was real fine. He filled out those jeans quite nicely. Of course, his style in fashion was sometimes atrocious. He would wear this one tie. Every time I saw it, I had to take a deep breath because that was just horrible. No, that was bad. But he's pretty much a teaching foil to Feeney. He relates more to the children because he's a younger person. He drives a motorcycle to school, has a motorcycle helmet. He's pretty much the cool teacher to Feeney's more military traditional style. But that is what creates a really good relationship between them. It's almost like they're the Cory Sean of the adult world. The problems for Cory and Sean this season really revolve around them wanting to become popular and wanting to get with girls and cut corners in grades. But all the same, we do get some really dramatic storylines with Sean's character, and I feel like a lot of the depth of the show comes from Sean. Not because he's just a better character, because I don't think it's that. It's the fact that because he's lower class than Cory and more insecure than Cory in certain matters with his whole bad boy persona, you get to go through things differently with him. Because Cory, like I said before, is the anchor. He's the middleman. And Sean can be that extreme. So his storylines revolve around, him being poor when his mother goes away and then his father leaves him to go search for the mother, and he's left living with the Matthew family, but he doesn't really relate to them because they come from two different worlds. And then the whole conflict between Cory and Sean, and how Cory feels like they're perfectly the same, but Sean is always remembering that they do come from different social economic backgrounds, and so there will always be that barrier in his mind between them, even though Cory always tries to tell him, no, we're the same, any place you can go, I can go. So Sean really becomes the character where all the drama surrounds that's unrelated to romance, because he doesn't really have really romantic drama. I mean, he'll get with girls and he'll flirt with different girls, but it's never like, it's not like Topanga and Cory. And in this season, you kind of get a little bit of hints for Cory and Topanga a little bit. There's a scene where Cory gets mono, and Topanga basically comes like, I like you, so do you like me too? And he just pretends that he falls asleep so he doesn't have to answer her. But you see a little bit of their relationship kind of developing. Again, you get Sean's home situation, and then he ends up living with Mr. Turner, which adds a really interesting thing when it comes up in season 3. But overall, this season is pretty much a transition for some of the more deep storylines. I mean, there were some storylines in this, the traditional, like, prejudice and all that kind of stuff, and family and things like that. But I feel like as the seasons progress, they are not afraid to tackle, sadder and sadder storylines. Because the thing about it is that even though Sean lives with Turner next season, it doesn't resolve all of his issues, all his fears about who he is. It just kind of leaves the building blocks for those things. And I feel like, if I remember correctly, all those things kind of continue as the series goes along. Season 3, so far, is my favorite of the 3 seasons because of how it raises issues for the characters. First of all, it starts off with Topanga and Cory officially becoming a real couple, which is really exciting because the overarching scope of this season is about them being together, being happy, then falling apart, breaking up, and then coming back together again. And it has so much more emotional resonance because of that. Because you have the relationship overarching, especially like once Topanga and Cory actually break up. And I feel like the breakup was really well handled. And I felt upset when they weren't together because I like they need to be together because they're Cory and Topanga. But when they did come back together, it was kind of like yay. But at the same time, you know, it wasn't a perfect breakup. There was frustrations, and it made it more realistic because you know that this is Carrie's first relationship, and I mean not Carrie. You know this is Cory's first relationship, and he doesn't really know how to handle situations that well. So the fact that, you know, they have the periods where he's being a jerk to her and not really handling everything the way he should, you know, it's played up, but at the same time you can understand why he's reacting that way. Sean continues to have that whole frustration from last season. He feels like a burden because even though he and Turner get along, they're not family. You know, Turner is a bachelor. He wants to still be with women. He still wants to have relationships, have a good time. He's not ready to be a parent. Sean doesn't really want to be parented by him. And so they're always kind of going back and forth. But they work well together when they try to work well together. And I feel like that's what makes their relationship so strong when they actually talk about them, because they do care for one another. I mean, he wants to become Sean's guardian, but Sean also doesn't want that. He wants his family, and they keep drifting away from him. Like, every time he tries to reach out to, like, his family back at the trailer park and things like that, there's always some kind of barrier or bridge between them. Also, the thing going on with Sean is that there are two things that really come up in this season about him. Him wanting to find himself because he doesn't really seem to work well at school. He's not a really good student. He's not strong academically, but he wants to accomplish things with his life, and he feels like school isn't the place for him to find that. And that frustration comes through really well, like when he gets the a ticket to go to Paris, but it's Paris, Texas. And how he just wants to escape. And if you think back to your adolescent days, you know that feeling about you're in school, you're frustrated, it's just this kind of like every day is the same kind of routine. Is this really going to help you in life? And so that you get a lot of that from Sean, because he just feels like he's in a rut. But the also thing that comes up with him that's really interesting is how his bad boy, playboy image comes back to haunt him when he actually gets interested in a real girl. Not a real girl. When he actually gets interested in having a real relationship with a girl. Because he's so well known as being the boy who dates girls and then leaves them. When he's interested in this one girl, she doesn't want to be in a relationship with him because she's afraid that he's going to break her heart. Which, you know, is a valid concern, but at the same time, they undermine who Sean is. And he really gets affected by that because, you know, just because he does that doesn't mean he can't be in a real relationship. So that was a really interesting thing. It's probably going to get, like, later on, because I know he goes up and down with girls until he gets with Angela. OTP, that's my shit. I love Sean and Angela. That was my couple. Forever bitter about how that shit didn't get resolved. But you know what? I'll talk about that later. But that always made me mad. But then we go over to Eric, and Eric's storyline this season really, really, like, it made me sad because, first of all, okay, as I said before, he has slowly become an idiot. And in season 3, his idiocy was, like, in full force. But at the same time, there were consequences for his actions, which I think is what made his storyline actually mean something to me. Because in this season, he's a senior and he's getting ready to go to college. And his grades aren't that good. And he finds an internship to kind of help him pick up his grades in communications. And what happens is he wants to get into this career so much that he kind of neglects school even more. And he's like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to quit school and go get a job and do this. But then when he quit school to go do this internship, it doesn't work out for him because the internship is only open to students. And what he was doing, because he was replacing the weatherman because he was sick for a while, so he was doing the weather news. But when the guy got better, you know, he was just going to be replaced because he's not a real weatherman. He's not trained to do that. And so it was him learning that, like, just because he found that one thing he was good at doesn't mean it was always going to be there, that he needed that education to help him go through life. But at the same time, he was never getting grades that were good consistently throughout the series. That's what we're supposed to assume anyway. And so the chances of him going to a real school were just always slim. And in the finale, what happens is he gets waitlisted into one of the schools, and so he feels like he's gonna graduate with all his friends. He's gonna go, so he plans this whole trip to go away and do that whole thing before he goes to school. And it has this whole thing about him and Cory, about how he and Cory, even though they're brothers and they live together for so long, they always shared a room, they don't really know each other, because by the time that, they were at a point where they could really be friends and not just brothers, Eric's getting ready to leave. He's getting ready to go to college, and they never really got a chance to bond and really be brothers the way that they wanted to be. But so in the finale, Cory gives Eric the letter, and he thinks this is gonna be his acceptance letter, and he opens it, and he's not going to college. Like, he gets rejected, and that scene really, like, I know it was corny, I know it was cheesy, I know it gets better in the end, but I just felt so bad for him, because even though he wasn't a diligent student, even though he was stupid, and this should have happened, it was right to do so, and I think that I like the fact that they made him not get in. It was just so upsetting, because he wanted it so bad, and the way it concluded with him and Cory now having a second chance to be together, and there was this like hope at the end of the tunnel, it really just made the whole season kind of wrap up really well, because it was all about relationships and friendships and bonding. And I think those are the things that makes Boy Meets World such a great show. I mean, because the thing about it is, the writing is not spectacular. The writing is extremely formulaic. It is like, what's going to happen as soon as you start the episode. You know how it's going to play out. Everything's going to be okay at the end of the episode. And, to a degree, that's fine when you can enjoy the characters. And if it wasn't for the characters on this show, the show wouldn't be anything. The fact that, ever since I started watching the show, I knew who Topanga was. Cory, Sean, Eric, Angela, they all meant something to me, and because they meant something, their stories matter. So even when it was cheesy or corny or just silly, I felt connected to them, because I love the way the characters are written, even when they got stupid, like Eric. But still, he was always endearing. And so I think that what makes Boy Meets World such a good show are the characters. The characters are the heart and soul of this series, and their relationships make it worth watching. Because other than that, it doesn't offer that much in terms of writing or really complex things, at least not at this point. Maybe if I get further on, I'll get to that. But it offers a lot of heart, and heart in the right way. So I really enjoyed Boy Meets World. It so far has been living up to my nostalgia. There are certain things that kind of made me go, oh, that 90s, because the fashion, oh, Jesus. Who said it was a good idea for a person to wear 3 layers of shirts? It's like, it's an undershirt, then another shirt, then a shirt without buttons. What is that? And so much denim. Oh my god. Too much denim. Too much. And in season 3, Cordelia, Queen Cordy, she was on the train, and Boy Meets World, I was flipping balls. That was crazy. But anyway, I really love this show. It has lived up to my nostalgia pretty well so far. It's funny because now I can recognize all the cheese, but at the same time, I think that if you enjoyed it when you were younger, it'll hold up good enough if the characters were what you cared about. If you cared about Sean, Topanga, and Cory, you will probably still care about them now. Our next nostalgia watch will be the first season of Sabrina the Teenage Witch and the first season of Moesha.